Item number 3, relationship orientation. Okay, same deal. Take the 5 questions and self-score yourself. 2 seconds. 10 to 13, couple on the low end, so you have 4 or 5. 14 to 17. Okay, so quite a few, probably 18 or so. Okay, 18 to 21. Okay, that's 10, 12. 22 to 25. Nobody. So again, nobody at the ends. The largest number was 14 to 17, and quite a few 18 to 21. So the group is skewed a little bit to the right on relationship orientation, meaning it's moderate to high relationship orientation. Obviously, if you're on this side, much more of a professional kind of a relationship at work. If you're on the right-hand side, it's even more personal relationships at work. Okay, so it's that strong. How strong is your orientation to build relationships? Go to the right-hand side. You see the U.S. very low. Again, might be surprising to you. We're a friendly country, right? But very low relationship orientation. Again, this is relative to some of these other countries. If you've been to India, I outsourced a lot of work to India when I was at Verizon call center work, and I would send my team down to India. And these were Americans going to India for the first time, had never met their Indian counterparts. When they got off the plane in New Delhi airport, their Indian hosts insisted that they shouldn't stay in hotels. They should come stay with them at their homes. Imagine you going for a business trip, first time you're meeting somebody, come stay at my house. I had warned them about that in advance, by the way. There's a lot of hidden costs of that hospitality. A lot of interference in your life. How can we set you up? You're so nice. Here's a nice girl for you to marry while you're single. But what I also told them is this is not just a hospitable country. It's part of the ecology. It's part of the ecosystem of that country. That's how business works. You cannot do business in some of these high relationship-oriented countries unless you have a personal relationship. You cannot do business. And so part of that instinct that Indians have and other cultures have, by the way, Latin American countries have the same thing, is to say, I want to get to know this person personally before I start doing business with them. Best way to do that, invite them to my house. Okay? That's part of the thinking that nobody would articulate. But now think about the difference here in the US. Relationships are built easily in the US, that's true, but they're dissolved easily too. And that's part of the low relationship orientation. If you go to, look at the Latin American countries, by the way, high relationship orientation, okay? And then look at the low versus the high, okay? On the high side, relationships built over time. Once built, they last longer. Deals require prior relationships, okay? You have to spend time. Saudi Arabia is the same way. 6 months it took me to do a deal in Saudi. Every time I'd go visit, they'd say, oh, come sit down, have a cup of tea with us, eat with us. They'd never talk about business. And I kept trying to push the envelope and never worked because they needed that time to get comfortable with me. Interpersonal comfort important. Time spent to know the other party, building relationships. Face-to-face meetings, better. Recourse to law is secondary. Not a lot of lawyers in India. Because they don't make money. It's a handshake. I know you, I trust you, I'm going to do business with you because I know you, okay? You think that would work in the US? Yeah. That's why we're here, okay? So relationships built quickly, dissolved easily, not required for deals, financial issues more important, closure and focus very important, willingness to work hard, contracts and lawyers required, fax and phone sufficient, proximity proportionate to strength of the relationship. If you're working with someone, or if you're living close to someone, you may have a strong relationship. They move to a different company, they move to a different part of the country, relationship erodes, okay? Now, knowing this, you got your X, you see the group is somewhere here, where would the P be on this? High relationship orientation, low, or in the middle? Where do you think it would be? Yeah?
I think it depends a lot on the area that you work on.
Okay.
I work in IFS, and I've been very lucky to have both of the areas that I work for. They're very family type, team oriented, but I've met a lot of areas that are definitely not like that.
Great point. See that? So there are subcultures within PwC. It's not one monolithic thing. Okay? There's audit, there's tax, there's advisory. There's different organizations have different culture. By the way, this framework, wonderful. You can use it in 5 minutes and assess the culture of any company, any organization you're in. use this framework. Any other comments on that?
The only thing I might add is that as a firm, I think we would be towards the left-hand side and
Yes.
have been that there for many years. But we're really aspiring toward the right-hand side. So you've seen this in our discussion about behaviors over the last few years. You've seen it about, we talk about relationship. That we as a firm value long-term relationships with our clients. And you need to get to know your clients. You need to get to understand them. You need to think about what bothers them at night, what keeps them awake at night. So I think that while we would like to say relationships can be built quickly, we acknowledge that we want them to be built for a long period of time, but that it's a work in progress, that we're trying to move. And I think a lot part of it is, Suri, because we look at this here and we see, where all these other countries are. We are a global network of firms. We can't survive and flourish without being able to build strong relationships. So while the firms still might be over on the left-hand side more than we might like, expect over time for us to be trying to be more and more on the right-hand side. And this is, again, where your Latino culture and heritage can really help you. This is where you can really take advantage of who you are to try to help the firm move in its path towards the right.
Wonderfully said. Thank you, Tony. Appreciate it. Thank you. Juan Roberto?
Right. So I guess the question is for Latinos, is it business or is it personal? Right? And for us, oftentimes, it's the same. It's business, it's personal. And so we imply that the implication here is that the relationship is what generates the trust. And the trust is what allows the business. So how many of you find yourself using consumer products that your family has always used? Right? And in Latin American countries, there's many products where the brand name is synonymous with the products, right? So always, Coca-Cola. Well, if you're going to drink something, and people would say, quiero una Coca-Cola de limón, right? Or una Coca-Cola de fresa, una Coca-Cola de China. It was all related to, because we had built a relationship over time. And so, as Tony said, we're good at that. We're good at that. We're relational. We're not transactional. We understand that there's a transaction that takes place, but we need to leverage that. And especially, I think, where folks in corporate, again, it knocks us off, is that we say, okay, we hear that we need to build relationships with our clients, that client engagements that are built on relationships are lasting ones, and those are better business for the firm. Yet I go to my supervisor and I want to spend some quality time, and I get a little bit of pushback, right? My supervisor doesn't want to know my familia. My supervisor won't want to come over to my house and have a beer. And so these are, again, some of the things that we need to learn, because then the key elements here is that we have an expectation. We have an expectation that our colleagues are going to be similar to us, and they want to get to know us. They're going to be warm, and that our supervisors are going to be concerned, and again, they want to get to know us. And so how do we navigate that in the corporate environment, and more specifically, how do we navigate that in PwC? Danny?
One of the things that shocked me the first year I moved to Mexico, I bumped into, I was with Cooper's, and I bumped into a KPMG client, okay? And I met the CFO, and I got them to convince to go out a proposal. Okay, it would have been a huge at that time $200,000 proposal. And I went to the managing partner of Cooper's and Lybrand, and I says, hey, guess what? I've got this great, lead. And he says the client's unhappy, and they're going to ask for a proposal. And he says, well, did you call the KPMG partner? I said, what do you mean did I call the KPMG partner? Well, you got to tell him that his client's not happy with him, okay? And then if he doesn't change, then we'll go for a proposal. Shocking, right? The relationship was so strong. In fact, it's interesting. I went to these accounting society meetings. They all are godparents of everybody, all the KPMG and E&Y, and they're all, interrelated. It's very hard to be competitive in that kind of environment, isn't it? Right? So the relationships are very strong sometimes as you go more dominant as you go further down south into Latin America, and it's real important. And obviously at PwC, Building trusting relationships is a core behavior, just like Tony said. That's what they're really putting. Because your client really is looking at you to be a trusting relationship. So let's use this relationship to our advantage, okay? I mean, it's a part of our Latino culture. Let's use it to our advantage because the firm really believes, okay. But I will tell you one thing. Does time impact relationships? What if you don't have a lot of time? Isn't that a big skill to be able to build a relationship very quickly? Huh? And so a strength, even though we said it's probably not that great, but being able to build a relationship in a limited amount of time and be able to, get something done, that's skill. All right? So try working on that skill. All right? Suri.
Okay. Communication indirectness. Okay. Let's do the same thing. Score yourself on the 5 things, and we'll talk about it a little bit. Okay. 10 to 13. Okay, there's 4, 5, 6, 10 to 13s. 14 to 17. Lots more, about 15, 14 to 17. 18 to 21. Okay, that's a fair number. 22 to 25. Not a lot. Okay, so nobody at the extremes. Couple people here, most people here. Okay, moderate to high communication indirectness. Okay, so obviously if you're on the right-hand side, much more indirect. Okay, so much more implicit. If you're on the left-hand side, much more direct, much more explicit. You never have to worry about the message you're getting. It's pretty direct coming from these folks. Here, coming from this side of the grid, you have to almost pay as much attention to what is not being said as what is being said. So if somebody, you were at a discussion, a group meeting, somebody who's indirect may come out and say, well, we discussed a lot of things in that session. Well, that's a positive, discussed a lot of things. What they might not be saying is that we didn't focus on the 2 most important things in the session. You have to make that connection yourself for indirect people and amplify the message. Okay? Great example of a direct guy right here. Never have to worry about translation with Manny. He'll tell you, okay? Now, with me, it's interesting. I would tend to be indirect. People ask me to go out in the evening. I can't bring myself to say no, so I'll say I'll think about it. Well, all of my friends have figured it out. If he says I think about it, he ain't coming. Let's get going. Okay, so that's kind of how it works. Now, look at where the Latin American countries tend to be relatively indirect. Okay, the profile is a little bit indirect. Look at where the U.S. is, pretty direct. Okay, I'm going to ask you that final question quickly. Is look at the distinctions here. Okay, high indirectness. Read through it. Okay. You can read through the thing. Business info, formal set, eloquent answers are valued. Implicit nonverbal is good. Direct may not convey completely. Context as important as content. For indirect people, they'll spend a lot of time explaining the context. Okay. On the direct side, content more important than context. Just the facts, ma'am. Remember Dan Aykroyd in Dragnet? What happened? That's a direct guy. Okay, so a lot more direct here. Based upon this, where do you think PwC is? Direct or indirect or in the middle? Yeah. Probably more direct. Probably more direct. And then why would you, on what basis might you say that? Just experience of what you've done? Yeah.
I would actually say indirect.
Indirect. And why would you say that?
Because it's how we speak to our client and we bring that culture. We never say to a client, we think you're terrible, you're on fire. We never say that. Right? So we bring that in how we coach people.
And so this is an interesting dichotomy once again. Okay, I'll tell you, based upon doing this session 5 times, the answers we got back was we are very direct when we're talking about a project and we're in a project team with each other, not with clients necessarily. With each other, we're very direct. Hey, this is working, this is not working, we need to work on this because it's task-oriented. Internally in the firm and with clients, we tend to be more indirect. The messages during performance review are not that direct. It's a little more warm and fuzzy. You can't really figure out, am I in good shape or am I not? You tell me, does that ring true for you guys? There's a little bit of that mixed personality, okay? Very similar to the relationship orientation. Very strong externally, but relationship orientation internally expressed, especially across levels, not that high. So there is a unique, multiple culture here. Again, don't be confused. Recognize that it exists and flex. That's what cultural dexterity is all about. So when you are sitting in a performance review and the language is indirect, draw it out. Make it easy for the person to give you the feedback that they may be subliminally giving you. But draw it out, because it's an indirect communication environment, okay? In a project situation where you're in a team, develop a thick skin. You'll get a lot of developmental feedback. Don't be extra sensitive. Take it and say, feedback is a gift, I'm going to work on it. So you have to flex in different situations. That's the best message I can give you. Juan Roberto?
Yeah, and from the cultural standpoint, I guess it comes back to these key elements of having the tendency as Latinos to want to avoid conflict. And this is not unique to us as Latinos. I used to hear growing up here, even in school in the United States, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. So what do? Well, we feel obligated to say something, so we as Suri said, we send a mixed message, or we lead with something positive, right? Like if you're going to say something, if you got something you want to say that you consider negative, you lead with something positive. It was interesting in one of these sessions that we did earlier in the tour with PwC. We had a situation on this topic where we had a partner that was describing someone who needed to be more direct, that used like 100 words when they only needed 5. But the way he positioned it was interesting, because he said, now everybody knows I love Suri to death. And then he went and said, but Suri, you got to really indirect, you got to do. But even that, it's just a natural tendency to lead with something nice. So oftentimes we're confused. But again, as Latinos, we're programmed that way. We want to be nice. We want to be helpful. I mean, again, talking about Mexico City, asking for direction, Mexico City or any land country, just like horrible, right? Because everybody wants to be helpful. I was asking direction in Mexico City. I was on Avenida Reforma, right? And Avenida Reforma has all those roundabouts, right? All the glorietas. And so I asked the fellow, this is where I'm trying to get to. He said, can you help me? And he says, no sé, right? I don't know, but go here, straight here to the next glorieta and ask somebody over there. They know, And I'm thinking, okay, but what if it's that way? But he was trying to be helpful. But the message was, I don't know. I don't know. And as Suri was mentioning, the whole cultural dexterity is understanding and being able to dig and find out what the hidden message is. So again, if being accurate and precise is valued, but it's valued within the context of we don't do it in a fashion that's mean and nasty. How can we get that done? And as Latinos, if we're used to getting kind of the warm and fuzzy, because we all had, did everybody have, like I had this tia that used to come up and would always tell me how, she loved me, but she'd grab my cheeks and, I could shoot her. But I'd run from her, right? Because I didn't need all that love. I needed more constructive feedback. But if you have that situation and we're getting just the direct, accurate and precise feedback, then do we understand the culture of the organization well enough to say, what, I'm not gonna be offended. So again, let's not get offended. Let's get educated.
How do you think your clients want you to act? Direct or indirect when they ask you a question? Direct, right? They expect you to answer the question, right? They don't want the story. I mean, and they think you're tap dancing if you tell them a story first instead of answering the question, okay? So your clients want you to be more direct. Have you guys seen Congress and Senate in session? Who has seen the English Parliament in session? Have you ever seen that in session? And someone gets up to speak and everybody else is talking about them, over them and saying, they're talking and saying bullshit, you don't know what you're talking about. All that kind of, that's the way it happens in Parliament. The English are very direct. Very direct. They'll tell you what it is. So you have to know when to be direct and when to be indirect, okay? And that's that cultural, dexterity that we're talking about, that you've got to be flexible based on the situation. All right? The
only thing that I want to add to this is that I think that this has become very critical now during the ARC process where we're all getting feedback, where I think our tendency at the firm is maybe not to be confrontational, right? And so you walk away and you have no idea how you actually did. And you said, okay, fine, if no one told you anything very negative, so you let it go. But I think it behooves you almost to ask the question, well, tell me 3 things that I should improve on, that I should work on. Just give me some specifics, right? And we all have points. And even if you get a great evaluation, I did fantastic, that's great. But tell me how I can be even better. And I think you almost have to ask that question directly and keep probing until you get an answer that when you walk away, you're not confused by it. Because I think a lot of times we give up and we walk away, we're like, okay, I guess it's fine. But if someone asks you, how did you do this year? You don't know. And I think that becomes really important as you're thinking about the ARC committee, your coach, and if they don't have maybe the feedback that you need, then you go to the next person and you keep asking until you feel comfortable that you know how you did this past year.
Yeah. When you're having an evaluation, it's really important, especially if you're giving it, okay? I mean, I think either Juan Roberto or Suri mentioned it, they tend to focus on the good stuff first, okay? And you have an hour evaluation and maybe 50 minutes is focused on all the great stuff, and the stuff that's the most important is at the last 10 minutes, because it's negative. I really think if you want to give someone a good evaluation, just go right into how can you improve yourself. Go right in there and talk about it. I think that PwC, expects that, to get it. So, I mean, putting ourselves, empathy is a core behavior of PwC, but accurate and precise and written verbal communication required, okay? Tell it like it is. Be direct. They want to know. Okay. All right. Telling time does not need to involve how to build a watch. Right? Just tell them what the time is. All right. Suri.
So before we do this one, I want to mention a slight nuance to this. Interaction effects. Interaction effects. Here's what I mean. Each one of these variables are not independent. Okay, they exist along with the other variables in you, in me, okay? When 2 or more variables collide, it's kind of like taking 2 prescription medications. There are counterindications, okay? There are interaction effects of these things. So as an example, if you're highly relationship oriented and highly indirect in your communication style, I can predict that chances are you are accepting commitments that are not doable for you. Think about that for a second. You know how I know that? Because I'm both of those things. And I deal with him in that way. He'll say to me, okay, so we can get this proposal out in 2 days, right? Now, I'm relationship oriented, I want to please, okay? I'm indirect, I don't want to say no, okay? So even though it's not doable, I'll say, yeah, it can be done. What I'm really saying is, Manny, I'm going to try my darndest to get it done. He's interpreting it, he's a direct guy, he's saying, okay, it will be done. So when it doesn't happen in 2 days, he's like, Suri, hey, what's going on here? You told me you were going to get it done in 2 days. I will guarantee you, if you have that profile, you're doing the same thing in the firm. Remember, the firm doesn't read you like that. Here, commitments matter. You commit, you get it done. So I have to coach myself. So again, be self-aware when you're in situations like that. I'm much more direct with him. I say, no, I can't do this, Manny. It's not possible. And he accepts it, okay? He will accept that. But what he won't like is saying one thing and not doing it because of the way I'm thinking.